are still left. It's 5 participants are right now. So let's begin. I believe everyone else will join. Time is exact 6. So good evening, dear educators and participants. First of all, it's my privilege to welcome you all in today's webinar on understanding the R1, R2 and R3 framework in CBSE class 9. Right? The National Education Policy, that is NEP 2020, and National Curriculum Framework, that is 2023. What is their objectives? That our classroom should be multilingual. And it's viewed as a strength, right? If a person or if a student knows multiple language, it's his or her strength rather than a challenge, dear educators. So in alignment with the vision of CBSE, this vision, CBSE has introduced R1, R2 and R3 language framework for the students of class 9 from the year 2026-27, dear educators. So today's session, dear educators, is designed to help you to understand not only what R1, R2 and R3 mean, but also how it can be implemented effectively in our classrooms. We will discuss the purpose behind the framework, why it has been implemented, its benefit for the learners, what all are the practical classroom strategies, an example that you can immediately apply in your teaching practices in your classrooms. So, dear educators, by the end of the session, I hope you will feel confident in guiding your students through this important transition while promoting meaningful, joyful, and competency-based learning. We all are following competency-based learning. And to appreciate why this framework has been introduced, let us first understand the broader vision, why NEP 2020 and CBSE have started this multilingual education. So let's dive deep into it and explore why multilingual education and the vision of NEP 2020 and CBSE. I believe everyone, my voice is clear and whatever I'm sharing, you are able to see nicely, right? So moving ahead, dear educators, as you can see my screen, multilingual education, the vision of NEP 2020 and CBSE, right? So what its vision and what are CBSE's plans? So let's explore, let's dive deep into it. So as you can see, dear educators, this slide beautifully presents the 3 pillars that supports multilingual education. So let's begin with the base from the bottom. Why multilingual education? We all know that India is one of the world's most linguistically diverse country. Lots of languages are being spoken over here. Every language we know carries a unique culture, a unique history, and a unique way of thinking. And many stories and mindsets are associated with it. Now, after deep research and under the vision of NEP 2020, they recognize that children learn concepts more effectively when they first understand them in the familiar language. For example, if my mother tongue is Bengali, I will be able to understand the concept more clearly if I will be conveyed in Bengali. So, dear educators, multilingual education helps to bridge home experience with classroom learning, right? Making education more inclusive and meaningful. I will speak at certain places in Hindi also because many of you might be from who are taking Hindi in your school, right? So, बच्चा जब अपने मातृभाषा में सीख लेता है, it becomes much more easier for the child to understand, right? Imagine explaining the concept of evaporation to a child. It's just an example. You can take some other example also, which you feel like, right? If a child first understands it in its language spoken at home and then connects it with English scientific terms which we generally use in our classroom, conceptual understanding becomes much more stronger. Similarly, a child who knows the word pankha, right? Many of us do not know what pankha is, instantly understand fan because the concepts are connected. Now, how is it going to benefit the learners? The second level focus on learners development. Students who learn multiple language often demonstrate, see, when we know many language, our communication skill improves, greater cognitive flexibility, right? Cognitive flexibility also improves a lot. Improve problem solving ability because we are unable to understand the thing from the bottom of our heart. Enhance creativity. We can add creativity as per NEP. Increase the confidence in diverse social settings. There may be different background, different customs, and different traditions, and we will be able. It will enhance our confidence level. They became more adaptable learners because they learn to think from different linguistic perspective, right? Because we are able to understand the concept, think yourself as a student. So you will be able to understand the things in a much better, in a much clearer manner. Now let's discuss about national priorities, why the nation wants it. At the top of the pyramid lies, as you can see on my screen, national vision. What is the nation's vision? NEP 2020 aims to preserve India's rich linguistic heritage, the heritage which we have, while preparing our students for the global opportunities. We want to reach the global opportunities, but we want to preserve our culture, our heritage also. The objective of this system is not merely to teach more language, but to create responsible citizens who respect diversity. We learn to respect diversity. So we are able to communicate effectively and remain rooted to the Indian culture. हमें अपने Indian culture और values को नहीं छोड़ना है, right? While engaging confidently with the world, and we are competent. We feel more confident because we know so many languages. So, dear educators, NEP and NCF describe R1, R2, and R3 as the three languages students learn during their school year, right? With increased proficiency expected along all stages, right? So the level increases. Now, dear educators, just want to ask a question to you all. Can you think of a student who performs much better when allowed to explain an idea in a familiar? देखो हम क्लास में बहुत सारे प्रश्न पूछते हैं और बच्चा बोलता है ना मैम हम हिंदी में आंसर दें. So they are able to communicate more effectively and more smartly, and then it adds their confidence that my answer is being accepted by the teacher. And I'm sure that many of us has witnessed such examples in our day-to-day classroom situation. Being an educator, I have experienced the same thing. So now, dear educators, we have understood why multilingual education is important. Let's explore what exactly R1, R2, and R3 framework is. I believe my voice is clear and whatever I'm explaining is clear for everyone. In case, dear educators, you have doubt, you have query, towards the end, you can clear your doubts and the group will be open because for the upcoming webinars and seminars, I will be updating you in the group. So request you all not to leave the group, dear educators. Those who were not able to join exactly at 6, request you, even if the session gets over at 6:40, and we are not able to complete it, please rejoin after 10 minutes. So, dear educators, now we come to the heart of today's webinar. Many teachers assume, we all assume, right, before we deep dive into it, that R1, R2, and R3 simply mean first language, second language, and third language. This is a general concept, right? Actually, the framework is based on the role each language plays in the learner's educational journey. Every language has a significance, has an importance in our educational journey. Now, what is R1? Again, a little confusing, but very clear. R1 is the language in which the learner first develop literacy. and usually the language used as a medium of instruction. Suppose I am studying in a Hindi medium school. Most of the subject I am studying in Hindi. So my R1 will be Hindi. Ideally, it is the learner's mother tongue, right? Or another language that is most familiar to the child. Let's take another example, dear educator. A child from Uttar Pradesh studying primarily through Hindi may have Hindi as R1. I understand a lot of queries are there. I will address you. Don't worry at all. Now, what is R2 then? R2 is another language that develops academic proficiency and communication skill. It may be English or any other language. CBSE has not specified that Hindi will be R1 or English will be R2. The language which is used in your school mostly is R1. Like I'm teaching in an English medium school, so R1 is English, dear educators. Depending upon the school's language combination, students are expected to become confident readers, writers, speakers, and listeners in R2 as well. Right? Now let's discuss or explore about R3. What is R3? R3 is an additional language that is different from R1 and R2. It broadens students' linguistic exposure, promotes cultural understanding, and encourages communication beyond their immediate language environment. For example, a student may study R1 Hindi, R2 English, then R3 can be Sanskrit or any other language prescribed by CBSE. I will be sharing one circular with you all in your group. There are 19 languages and a child can select any. Suppose if your school is not taking R3 as Sanskrit, you are somewhere towards the south, then it can be Telugu also, right? If I am in Calcutta, I am not taking Sanskrit, then it can be Bengali also. So there are 19 languages in that notification, in that CBSE circular. Now, what is the purpose of the framework, dear educators? The real purpose is not to increase students' workload. They don't want to pressurize us. The framework aims to build multilingual competence, right? We should be multilingual, many languages, right? Strengthens conceptual understanding. जो भी हमने पढ़ाया है, concept should be very, very clear. Promote cognitive growth. Cognitive growth, mental growth होना चाहिए. Preserves India's linguistic diversity. We should be able to understand each and every person's tradition, customs, and we should respect it. Prepare students for a multilingual society instead of thinking about the diversity. So, dear educators, as teachers, our role is to create opportunities for meaningful language use rather than focusing on memorization and mugging up in the examination. That rote learning method is no longer in existence, right? Understanding is more. Now, suppose a students are reading a lesson on environmental conservation, कि कैसे हमें पर्यावरण को बचाना है. Ask them to discuss the topic in the familiar language. It can be any language. Identify vocabulary in English, right? So, two languages he is understanding, and present one important idea in the third language. Suppose if I am a Bengali, right? तो हिंदी में मैंने समझ लिया, इंग्लिश में उसके वोकैबुलरी को आइडेंटिफाई किया, एंड अपने लैंग्वेज से, दैट इज माय मदर टंग, आई हैव एडेड समथिंग टू इट, राइट? एंड इन दिस वे I am promoting my culture. At the same time, the other person is also learning. And this simple activity naturally develops multilingual competence without creating unnecessary pressure in the class. Right? So having understood the purpose of R1, R2 and R3 framework, let us now examine each component in great detail, in great depth, right? So now let's discuss developing global communication competencies. So let's find out what exactly it is, dear educators. So moving ahead, let's find out what we are going to understand now. R1 English, developing global communication and competencies, right? So let's again deep dive into it and explore what exactly it is. We all know English is a global language. right? So now let us begin by understanding R1, because if you are teaching in an English medium school, then in most of the school, R1 is English, right? CBSE's vision of English is not merely as a subject to pass an examination, but a language that equips learner, खाली exam pass करना नहीं है, with the skills needed for higher education, professional success, and global communication. Now, the focus is on 5 interconnected competencies. And what are these competencies? They are listening, speaking, reading, writing, and critical thinking, my dear friends, as you can see on my slide. So let's discuss about listening. Students should learn to listen actively. It's the vision. Identify the key ideas, inform meaning, and respond appropriately according to the situation. When a student listens to a podcast, right, in class 9th, or a classroom discussion is going on environmental conservation, they should be able to identify the speaker's main idea or main argument instead of just memorizing. Mugging up process is no longer in existence, dear educators. Now, if I talk about speaking skills, speaking should move beyond reading aloud. It's not book reading. Students should confidently express opinions, whatever they have understood, right? Participate in discussions, present ideas, and collaborate with others. Because when we collaborate with others, we get to know a lot many things. It adds to our knowledge and to our skills. Dear educators, suppose we are asking in a class, should mobile phones be allowed in school? A very common issue. Encourage them to justify their viewpoint with logical reason, then simply yes and no answer. So this will enhance their speaking skills, right? Now, let's move on towards reading. Reading is no longer limited to textbooks. We all know that. Students should engage with newspaper article, blogs, advertisement, biographies, poems, and digital text, which is nowadays easily available. The objective is to develop comprehension, interpretation, and critical reading skill. They are able to understand it critically, right? Now let's move on to writing. Writing should be purposeful. There should be a purpose of writing. Instead of writing only formal letters, student can create emails. They can write blogs, speeches, report writing, reflective journals where they are expressing their own views, and opinion paragraph. What is their viewpoint, right? For example, again, take a simple example. After a school, a cleanliness drive asks students to write a short reflection. What I learned from today's activity. There was a cleanliness drive, and what they observed, they need to mention. And this makes writing more meaningful and connected to real life experience, because as per NEP and NCF, uh, learning should be connected with real life situation. Now, towards the next skill, that is critical thinking. And this is the heart of competency based learning. They need to critically analyze. See, lots of data, a lot of information is available everywhere. Whether it's authentic or not, we need to explore, we need to think critically. Now, the work of the student is analyze information, evaluate evidence, compare, solve problem instead of just reproducing the answers in the answer booklets, right? So I'm taking an example from the fun they had, our previous book of class 9. Would you prefer studying with a robot teacher or a human teacher? Give 2 reasons. So they will put their own views. There is no single correct answer, dear educators. What matters is the quality of reasoning, whether they are able to answer logically or not. Now, as highlighted by CBSE, English classroom should develop confident communicators. They should be confident enough. We need to develop the skill among our learners. Thoughtful readers, creative writers, and critical thinkers who can use language effectively in real classroom situation, dear educators. So, dear educators, dear friends, while English prepare learners for global communication, the second language plays an equally significant role, that is an important role in strengthening uh, identity, culture, and emotional experience, right? So we have discussed about English, because right now we have taken English as R1. I have already told you it can be English, it can be Hindi. Now moving ahead, I'm moving to the next slide, and the next slide is is about Hindi, right? So let's see. So let us now move to R2, which we have taken as Hindi. So according to NEP 2020 and CBSC, every language is valuable. It's not that because English is a global language, so it stands at par, because it carries culture, emotion, tradition, and way of thinking. हमारी मातृभाषा हिंदी. Hindi is not simply another academic subject. It helps learners to remain connected with the roots, right? एंड डेवलपिंग स्ट्रॉन्ग कम्युनिकेशन एबिलिटीज, राइट? बच्चे को हिंदी में भी बात करना, व्यक्त करना आना चाहिए, राइट? लिखना भी आना चाहिए. द फर्स्ट फोकस एरिया इज लैंग्वेज प्रोफिशिएंसी. स्टूडेंट डेवलप फ्लुएंसी इन लिसनिंग, स्पीकिंग, रीडिंग एंड राइटिंग so that they can communicate confidently in everyday situation. Now let's take again an example. Student may conduct morning assembly. Mostly in our school, it's done in Hindi. Debates, role play, storytelling session in Hindi to improve fluency naturally, right? Day-to-day practice. The second focus area is literary appreciation. Now, literature help learners to understand emotions. हम भावनाएं समझ पाते हैं, वैल्यूज, इमेजिनेशन, बहुत कुछ कल्पना कर पाते हैं, एंड ह्यूमन एक्सपीरियंस, व्हाट दे हैव अंडरगॉन. rather than memorizing the poems, students should appreciate the poet's message, what is the message conveyed and why it is conveyed, and relate it to their own life, because teaching and learning process should be connected with real life situation, dear educators. After reading a poem on nature, right, वो पर्यावरण या पर कोई नेचर, प्रकृति पर पढ़ रहे हैं, है ना? हाउ कैन वी प्रोटेक्ट नेचर इन आवर नेबरहुड? मैं हिंदी में इसलिए बोल रही हूँ ताकि अगर हिंदी के अध्यापक इसमें हो तो उनको क्लियर हो जाए. दिस कनेक्ट लिटरेचर विथ रिस्पॉन्सिबल सिटीजनशिप. द थर्ड फोकस एरिया इज कम्युनिकेशन स्किल. मातृभाषा कम्युनिकेट करना आना चाहिए. लर्नर्स शुड confidently express ideas during discussions, presentations, interviews, and group activities, dear educators. Now, finally, the cultural values. If I talk about Hindi literature, introduces learners to Indian traditions, right? हमारी देश की ट्रेडिशंस के बारे में बताता है. फेस्टिवल्स, हिस्टोरिकल पर्सनालिटीज एंड द इथिकल वैल्यूज. सो दिस हेल्प स्टूडेंट्स टू अप्रिशिएट डाइवर्सिटी, राइट? हम दूसरे के बारे में जान सकते हैं while developing respect for different communities and culture. We have a deep respect for other communities and other culture. Now, what is the purpose? CBSE encourages teachers to design activities that are interactive, right? It should be an interactive session. Experiential, बच्चा उससे कुछ सीख पाए. Learner centered, बच्चे को उसमें ज्यादा participate करना है. Enabling student to use language in authentic context rather than limiting learning to textbook exercise. Khali, that should not be bookish education, that should be connected to real day-to-day situation, right? Now, dear educators, having explored English and Hindi, let us now understand the importance of the third language, right? Which enriches learners by connecting them with Indian remarkable linguistic diversity. Moving ahead, I have taken as Sanskrit. It can be any other language. I'm forwarding the PDF in the R1, R2 group, and you will see towards the end that there are 19 languages in which the textbook are being published, right? So you can see it in the R1, R2 group in which you have joined me, right? So let us see Sanskrit as a regional language, preserving heritage through language learning, right, dear educators? So the third language, R3. Now I am discussing about R3. It can be any language. It can be Bengali. It can be Telugu. It can be any other language. The 19 language which are there in the CBSE circular, right? Towards the end, you will be able to explore it. You will be able to get it. Whether it is Sanskrit or any other recognized regional language, the objective is much larger than learning vocabulary and grammar. It's not learning of just grammar and vocabulary, right? It's about preserving India's linguistic cultural heritage. For example, if I take my own house, I know Hindi, I know English, but if I will take Bengali, so I will be able to learn how to read, how to write, how to communicate in Bengali also, right? And my peer will be able, my friends will be able to know Bengali also, right? If I am in Kolkata, right? If I have taken. Otherwise, Sanskrit or any other language to the state to which I belong. It is about preserving India's linguistic and cultural heritage. The first focus area is foundational language skill from the foundation level, that is the grassroots level. Students should develop basic proficiency in listening, sunna, speaking, reading, and writing so that they can use the language confidently in simple situation, in day-to-day situation. The emphasis is on communication rather than perfection. We don't want perfection, we want communication. The second focus is cultural heritage. I will be able to tell lot many things about my culture. Every regional language reflects, I hope you all will agree to it, that they reflect local tradition. They tell about the folk tales, the festivals, the songs, and the history of that particular area or specific area, right? So Zoom is telling that 10 minutes are left and we need to rejoin. Dear educators, when the session will end after 10 minutes, I will be dropping a message in the WhatsApp group again and you can rejoin. Example, a student learning Sanskrit may explore ancient slokas with their meaning, while a student learning Tamil, Bengali, Marathi, or Punjabi may discover regional folk tales, proverbs, and poems that reflect local tradition. We are able to know a lot of many things about our culture and about tradition. Now, let's discuss the third focus area is Indian knowledge system. Now, as per NEP 2020, it highlights the importance of exposing learner to India's intellectual tradition through language. Right? With language, we are able to explore lot many things. Students become familiar with ideas from classical literature. It can be philosophy, it can be mathematics, astronomy, related to that specific language. For example, a simple Sanskrit shloka such as Vidya Dadati Vinayam, right, can become the starting point for discussing the importance of humanity, right? इसका क्या महत्व है मानव के जीवन में. Finally, regional identity, right? हमारी region की identity भी आगे बढ़ती है. Learning an additional Indian language promotes respect, right? National integration and appreciation for diversity. We get to know so many things about each other, right? It adds on our knowledge. When students understand another Indian language, they also understand the people's tradition. They understand about culture. They understand. They feel associated with the people, right? So, dear educators, CBSE's aim is not to burden the student with another subject, but to nurture multilingual and culturally aware and responsible citizens who can connect with India's heritage while participating confidently in an interconnected world. This world is interconnected. So we have understood the unique purpose of each language. Dear educators, that is R1 develops global communication skill, R2 strengthens linguistic and cultural identity, and R3 connects learners with Indian rich culture and heritage. So, dear educators, together these three languages creates well-rounded, multilingual learners prepared for both national and global level, right? So now let's move on, integrating R1, how we can integrate R1, R2 and R3 in our classroom in day-to-day practice. Let's understand it. So I'm forwarding the link for generating the certificate in your R1, R2 group. Don't worry at all, dear educators. I'm always there to help you out. You will be getting the certificate in your email ID, the provided email ID. Anyhow, if the chat box is filled, you will not be able to get, so delete the old mails. I'm always there to help you out. So now we have understood the purpose of each language, that is R1, R2 and R3. The next question is how to integrate. हम कैसे लाएंगे इनको classroom according to NEP 2020, dear educators and CBSE. Multilingual education should become a natural part. It should naturally come in our classroom. Rather than separate language periods, let us understand the strategy shown in this slide. So cross-linguistic connection should be there. Students naturally compare words, ideas, and expressions across language. Teachers should encourage learners to identify similarity and differences between the languages. While teaching English, the word compassion, suppose if it comes, ask student what it is called in Hindi, right? Critical thinking. Is there any equivalent word in Sanskrit or any other regional language? Does the meaning remain exactly the same? So it strengthens vocabulary and conceptual understanding across all language. Now, translanguaging, what it is? One of the important recommendation of NEP 2020 is the flexible use of language for learning, right? There should be flexibility. So translanguaging means allowing students to use all the language they know to construct meaning. They understand better. It does not mean replacing English. English ko hata do, दूसरे language ko le aao. Instead, it means using familiar language as a bridge towards learning new concept. It acts as a bridge. Example, if I again take the example because I am an English teacher, fun they had if I'm taking the chapter, before reading the chapter, ask student to discuss in Hindi or their home language. How do you imagine school in 2050? What is their idea and opinion? Once students generate idea, encourage them to express the same idea in English. It will add clarity. Now, if I discuss about project-based learning, the educators allow students to apply language in authentic context, right? Instead of writing isolated answers, students investigate, they collaborate, जुड़ना बहुत जरूरी है, and present findings and communicate meaningfully. Example, assign a project. It can be any festivals of India, right? For example, I'm collect information in Hindi, you can ask them. Present it in English. Include greetings in the local language, the language which the child uses at home. You can add folk songs, quotation from a regional language which the child is studying. And one project integrates all the languages naturally. Now, collaborative learning. So, learning develops through interaction. I believe you all will agree to it, dear educators. So, group discussions, debates, peer teaching, and collaborative tasks. It helps to provide meaningful opportunities for communication. Now, we can also do mixed language groups. We can create. So, one student explain the concept in English, another summarize, because inclusive education we are talking under NEP and NCF. सबको हमें include करना है, right? While another contributes a proverb or a cultural reference from a regional language. And when we appreciate, the child feels involved, isn't it? Experiential learning. CBSC, dear educators, strongly advocates learning through real life experience. We should apply the knowledge in day-to-day situation. Students should learn best when they use it in meaningful situation. Example, if I organize a visit to a local museum, students describe their observation in English, discuss the historical facts which they saw in Hindi, and collecting regional names or artifacts wherever possible. Learning becomes memorable because students experience language in authentic context. Now, dear educators, the purpose is not to teach three languages separately, but to use them together as a resource to deepen our learning and understanding. When language complement one another, dear educators, the student become confident communicator, they become better thinker, and they become responsible individuals. So once these classroom practices are in place, the next step is selecting teaching strategies. Now, what are the teaching strategies which we can follow? Dear educators, Zoom is showing that only 2 minutes are left. So after 10 minutes, we will rejoin. I'm moving to the next slide, right? So let's see. Now, what are the pedagogical tools which we can apply, right? So effective multilingual classroom require innovative teaching approaches. CBSC recommends moving away from lecture method, you all know this very well, towards activity-based, competency-based, and learner-centered. The child should be the person who should be an explorer. So storytelling, बच्चा involved है ज़्यादा, right? Links not opening, somebody wrote. So we will paste again in the group. Don't worry, sir. Stories naturally connect language with imagination, emotions, and values. Students understand concept better when ideas are presented through stories. Example, if I'm narrating the story of a woodcutter, ask student to retell it in English. share the moral in Hindi, dear educators, and we can ask them to mention the proverbs related with honesty in any of the Indian languages which they are learning. So this develops multilingual communication without increasing the academic burden towards the learning process. Now, role play is also very important. बच्चा अपने आप को सिचुएशन में रख के देखता है, right? Don't worry, dear educators, for the certificate. It's my responsibility. Develops speaking confidence, creativity, and collaboration. For example, while teaching Adventure of Toto, we can assign roles and then they can perform it. And we have very few seconds left. Now, language games also helps us. Games make vocabulary learning very enjoyable. So, welcome back once again, dear educators. So, language games, let's discuss about it. So, games make vocabulary learning very, very enjoyable. So, it can be a word chain, it can be a picture description, it can be a vocabulary bingo, crossword puzzles. Now, guess the object is another enjoyable game. Language treasure hunt should be organized from time to time. Display the picture of a tree. Now, what happens? Students identify its parts in English, in Hindi, and any other Indian language which the child is learning, and learning becomes interactive rather than mechanical. Now, if I talk about reading circle promotes collaboration and critical thinking. So each students receive a different responsibility, different tasks are given or allotted to the student. Some can summarize. There can be a child who can be a vocabulary founder, question creator, connector who helps in connecting, illustrator. So after reading, students discuss the text together. That develops comprehension far beyond memorizing textbook questions. Now, if I talk about digital tools, we all know that technology has become very important part of language learning. Now, CBSE also encourages meaningful use of digital resources. So, teacher can use interactive quizzes, digital storytelling, audio recording, and educational videos. So, QR code resources available in the textbook. You might have seen कि बुक के कॉर्नर में एक QR कोड होता है. We can scan it and we can use the content. Student can even record short podcast or videos presentation to improve their speaking skill. Now, if I talk about peer learning, dear educators, students often learn best from one another. Pair high confidence learner with those needing support so they can help each other. One student read a passage, another summarize it. The third can ask a question. The fourth child can provide the feedback, and every learner participate. And this is how we can practice inclusive education in our day-to-day teaching practices, right? Earlier, you all will agree to it that teacher used to talk and student used to listen. Now, teacher are facilitators. Students communicate, they should collaborate, create, and reflect. And this is the essence of competency-based education of CBSE. So, after discussing these teaching strategies, an equally important question arises: how to assess multilingual learning meaningfully, right? So, let's discuss about the assessment pattern, how we can assess our learners, right? So let's move on to the next slide, dear educators. Assessment, right? So if I talk about assessment, assessment is very important. The most significant shift introduced through NEP 2020 and CBSE, and what it is, assessment should no longer measure only memory, how much the child has learned. Instead, it should evaluate understanding, बच्चे को समझ में आया या नहीं, communication process, application, collaboration, and critical thinking. If I talk about formative assessment, assessment should happen continuously. We should observe throughout the learning process. Teacher observes participation, discussion, presentation, projects, and classroom interaction of our children. Instead of conducting only written tests after completing a lesson, dear educators, assess students when they participate in group discussion or oral presentation, and we as teachers are able to make out. And this provides timely feedback and supports improvement. Now, competency based assessment, if I talk about, we all know that CBSE encourages questions that require students to apply their knowledge rather than reproduce textbook answer, dear educators. So instead of asking, write the summary of the chapter. If you were the main character, what decision would you have taken differently and why? We can ask our children. So the child needs to analyze, the child needs to justify and think critically. Now, performance tasks. Students demonstrate learning by performing meaningful tasks. Tasks are given. And what can be these? It can be role play, it can be speech, interviews, poster making, storytelling, and group presentation. So these tasks assess communication, collaboration, creativity, and confidence of our learners from time to time. Now, moving ahead, portfolios. Now, it's a document that learner grows over time, and it may include creative writing, reading reflection of our children, projects, poems, and recording. It can include vocabulary journals also and self-reflection, right? So rather than judging a student or a child based on one examination, throughout the year we can assess our children. We will get to know our children in a better manner. Now, self and peer assessment, right? The child is assessing himself or herself, and peer assessment is also going on. दूसरे बच्चे उसका assessment कर रहे हैं, right? One of the most valuable skills student learn is to can develop is reflection, right? How much the child learn. So after completing an activity, ask student, what did I do well, right? What can I improve? What did I learn today? Similarly, classmates provide constructive feedback using simple rubrics, and this develops responsibility, confidence among our learners, and independent learning. Suppose student prepare a presentation of safe water, right? Pani bachana hai, right? Instead of giving marks only for grammar, the idea is clear or not, clarity of idea is there or not, how the child is communicating, they have teamwork, whether they are collaborating, creativity, and appropriate language is used or not. Are the child becoming confident? Are they using critical thinking? So these reflect the competency based assessment approach recommended by CBSE, and we must follow it, right? So assessment should become assessment for learning, whatever the child is learning, not merely assessment of learning. So when assessment encourages reflection, communication, and growth, our students become confident, they become lifelong learners rather than exam focused learners. That we need to remove. So dear educators, we have explored the vision, implementation, classroom practices, pedagogy, and assessment under R1, R2, and R3 framework. In the next section, we will look on how schools and teachers can actually implement this framework in day-to-day teaching practices, dear educators. So let's again explore what all we can do in our daily classroom practices. So, dear educators, as we come to the end of the session, let's revisit the key messages that every educator should take back to their classroom. The R1, R2, and R3 framework is not merely a change in language policy, dear educators. It represents a transformation in the way we think about language learning. It encourages us to see language as a resource that enriches learning, strengthen identities, and prepare students for multilingual world, right? So let's see. We need to promote multilingual competence. Our goal is not simply to teach the 3 different languages. Our goal is to help our students to become confident multilingual communicators. When learners can read, write, speak, and think across language, they become more adaptable, they become creative and effective communicators. Dear educators, a student who can express a scientific concept in English, discuss it with his parents in Hindi, and recognize related terminology in Sanskrit or any other regional language demonstrates true multilingual competence. Now, celebrate linguistic diversity. We all belong to different cultures and traditions, and India is a home of hundreds of languages and dialects. Every child enters the classroom with a unique background. You all will agree to it. According to NEP 2020, every language deserves equal respect because language is closely connected to identity, culture, and heritage. As teacher, we should create classroom where students should feel proud of the language they speak. Now we need to invite our students to greet the class in different Indian languages during the morning assembly. It's a very simple task, or ask them to share proverbs which they generally use at home. Such simple activities promote respect for diversity and encourages active participation. Now, fosters inclusive classroom. This is another important strategy. Now, CBSE always insists that every learner should feel valued and included, right? We all are there, right? And but if we are appreciating each other, it adds confidence. So some student may be more fluent in English while other may express in Hindi or any other regional language. Our responsibility is to create opportunities for these learners where every learner can participate confidently. मौका नहीं मिला ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए, right? During group discussions, allow students to first organize their thoughts in a familiar language before presenting it in English. And this reduces anxiety and it adds confidence. An inclusive classroom focuses on understanding rather than judging. Encourage lifelong learning. Language learning does not end with school examination. So, if a multilingual abilities students develop today will find them throughout their lives in higher education, at workplace, in travel, right? And it helps them in communication also. Encourage students to read books, newspaper, and digital articles and literature in different languages. The more they engage with language, the richer their thinking becomes, the richer their vocabulary becomes. Now, align classroom practice with CBSE and NEP 2020 guidelines. So finally, when every classroom practice should reflect the vision of CBSE and NEP, we all need to practice it, moving away from rote learning to competency-based learning, from teacher-centered to learner-centered we need to follow, from memorization to meaningful communication, and from isolated language teaching to integrating, सबको एक साथ जोड़ना. When these principles are implemented together, our classroom, dear educators, become space where students not only learn language but also learn to think, they learn to collaborate, they learn to appreciate diversity, and they become more diverse and responsible citizen. They accept diversity. So with these key messages in mind, let me conclude today's presentation by thanking each one of you for your participation and commitment, right, dear educators? So, dear educators, if you have, I will unmute you all. So if you have doubts and queries, you can ask me, right? I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for your valuable time, for your active participation, and your commitment towards education, quality education. So, dear educators, today we explored the vision of R1, R2, and R3 framework, understood its alignment with NEP and NCF and CBSE's secondary curriculum, and we discussed the practical strategies of how we can implement it in our day-to-day teaching practices. I sincerely hope that the idea shared today will help you to create classroom where every learner feels confident, communicate nicely, think critically, and appreciate India's cultural diversity. So, as educators, we not merely teaching languages, we are nurturing confident communicators, dear educators. We are developing critical thinkers and responsible global citizens. Yes, Shweta ma'am, I will clear your doubt. I encourage each one of you to begin with a small change, even simple classroom practice such as collaborative learning, multilingual discussions, project-based activities, and competency-based assessment can bring significant change in our teaching experience. Dear educators, please remember every language a child knows is a strength, it's not a barrier. When we value every language, we value every learner, we value every custom and tradition. Thank you once again for joining me today. I truly appreciate your enthusiasm and dedication towards professional growth and meaningful classroom strategy. If you have any suggestions or experience to share regarding the implementation of R1, R2, and R3 framework. I will be delighted to interact with you. I'm I'm not sharing the content now. I need to unmute each one of you, right? So I'm just unmuting you all. Just a second, dear educators, and you can clear your doubts. Just a second, dear educators. So, dear educators, now you can unmute yourself and you can clear your doubts if you have any. And I will feel happy to help you out in the learning journey.
Good
Yes,
evening, ma'am.
good evening, ma'am.
Ma'am, I just want to ask you that, as you told that means multilingual is important in the classroom, but means I am teaching in a English medium school, and it's a priority to speak in English only. So
Right.
how can I means communicate
Implement it in
with
the
the
classroom,
students
right,
in
ma'am? This is your
yeah,
query,
yeah,
if
yeah.
I'm not wrong. Right, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
As per NEP and NCF and as per their guidelines, it's important that we should include each and every learner in our classroom. I believe you will agree to it that all the learners are not of the same level, right? There are different level of learners, right? And what CBSE and NEP encourage is using learners' home language, right? So we need to understand them and we need to give them opportunities, right? So in case they are not able to understand the concept clearly, they can understand in Hindi and it will add confidence and then they can express it in English, right? Maybe if you are from Kolkata or maybe from some other part of the country, whatever the third language you are using, the child may be more confident in that, right? So it will help in the learning journey and it will add more confident and what you can say critical thinkers in our classroom. We need to scaffold it. We need to give the lessons in small chunks. It's not a replacement for English, particularly when students struggle with understanding. It's just helping them out.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
If any other doubt is there, ma'am, I will feel happy to address it.
No,
Good
ma'am.
It's
evening.
not that
Only
the
this.
child cannot use English in school. It's an English medium school. I do agree. I do understand, right? The only thing is they need to do is that they need to understand the concept instead of mugging up, instead of memorizing, instead of rote learning.
Okay, ma'am.
Any other question, ma'am?
Thank you
The
so
group
much.
will be
No,
open
ma'am.
for the upcoming webinars and sessions. Please don't leave the group. Request you once again. I believe each one of you have got the received certificates.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a 2-hour certification.
Yes,
Any
ma'am.
other and
Okay.
any other doubt and query, ma'am?
No other doubt, ma'am.
Thank you
Only
so
that.
much. I hope the
Thank you so
session
much,
was
ma'am.
fruitful for each one of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I'm an educator from Karnataka, and thank you for the informative session, first of all. It was quite helpful for each one of us. Now, my question is not about the teaching strategy. It's a basic clarification that I seek from you as a resource person today. Our school is having R1 as the first language, English. Okay,
Right,
it's
I
a CBSE
understand.
based. And right now we are promoting the state language, Kannada, as the R2. Okay.
Okay,
However, CBSE offers us an option of around 18, 19 languages. So in grade 9 and 10, we are offering Hindi and Kannada as the second language. So I am a Sanskrit teacher. All right.
right,
So my question here is when our children are open to having, let's say, a strength of 100, 60 are choosing Kannada and 40 choose Hindi. So how
right.
is it for R3? I mean, R3 has to be a different language from R1 and R2,
Sure, ma'am.
but can that also be a combination of two languages?
No, ma'am. It cannot be a combination of two language. If R1 is English, R2 is Kannada, then R3 should be a different language. That can be Hindi or that can be any other language.
Yes, ma'am, I totally understand. But right now, yeah, as you see, each child has a choice of choosing any language he wants. So in our school, we are offering out of 100, like I said, and as an example,
60 are
60 are
going,
taking Kannada as second language. So those 60 can choose Hindi or Sanskrit as their R3.
right, ma'am. They can choose.
So that
Now, one
continue.
note is that CBSE issues further implementation guidelines and school-specific flexibility for multilingual offerings, right? So those would take
Yeah,
that we will follow later on. So it's always advisable to refer to CBSE circular from time to time, right? Like in English also,
that,
you might be knowing that there is R1 and R2,
yes.
right? So many of us English medium schools are taking R1. Now again it was confusing because R1, R2 and R3 as per CBSE's framework, then why R1 and R2 again in English, right? So child can
Correct.
choose R1 as R2 also as English, depending upon the choice the child makes. We cannot impose anything on the child, like
All
maths
right, ma'am. I
basic
got
and maths standard.
correct. So a group of students can choose this, and the other group can choose. It's not mandatory that the entire
No,
batch of 100
no,
selects one subject.
no, ma'am. It's not
All right.
mandatory.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Any other doubt or query? Anyhow, if in future also, if you have any doubt, any query, you have my personal number. Please stay connected and clear your doubts for further updates. I will feel happy. Now I'm ending the session with the hope that all doubts are clear. Have a nice day ahead and stay connected. Thank you.